So anyway, today we have with us Vlad's great friend, and we're just meeting today, Rachel Atcheson. You know, what Vlad has always told me about you is that not only there's a multifaceted enjoyment about your life where you're working in government in a sense, you're working in care, nutrition, but also you're a rock and roller, you're a neighborhood fan. Tell me about your rock and roll. You guys met.
Yeah. We didn't meet through the punk rock scene, but then one time we ended up at a show, a Youth of Today's show.
Yeah. I saw Youth of Today.
And I saw him across the room, and I was like, "Oh wow, Vlad's into this too! Great."
Yeah.
So I started going to punk rock basement shows when I was 15.
And DC is so notorious for this. I'm jealous, huh?
Yeah, the basement scene was thriving at that point. And it was wonderful. I would hang out at the Corpse Fortress. That was the local venue of my favorite, and went to shows about once a week for a good 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that exposed me to social justice. It gave me a new lens to look at the world.
And how did that happen?
So now folks won't give as many politically charged speeches at shows. But when I was going, very often, every show, you'd have one band that would just explain what they were interested in, what they were passionate about, whether it was criminal justice reform, whether it was fighting sexism, a range of topics that got me thinking outside the box.
So what's your favorite band?
Sick Fix was the local favorite. I'd say Cro-Mag's Age of Quarrel is just no one can top it. Yeah.
That's pretty great. Now, when you were a kid growing up, did you sort of sit in your room and write stuff down or think of things that, because, you know, once you go to see the band and the band is speaking your words, what was it like before you saw bands that spoke your words? Were you at home creating this sort of
Yeah,
words?
I wasn't. I honestly, I grew up in a very privileged household in a upper middle class family, and I legitimately was not exposed to many social justice causes that the punk scene exposed me to. So I was not thinking critically. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with depression, and that added a whole new layer to social justice for me. And the mixture of punk rock and depression just opened up the world that I live now, and trying to live my values as best as possible.
Yeah.
And I see on your social media, you still keep in touch with a lot of your friends from that period, right?
Oh yeah. It helps. I claimed straight edge, about 10 years ago, and that kind of ties you to the punk scene forever. So I keep in touch with everyone.
And how did the marriage of, you know, the both situations? I mean, depression, more and more people talk about it, and anytime you talk about things, it brings it to the fore. The same with the social justice. How's the combination of the two affect you in any way, or work for you, or, you know, do the things that you need to do in your job?
So depression gave me a new lens to look at the world. It, in essence, raised the curtain. It gave me this empathy that I both wish and don't wish upon everyone. I think depression was the best thing and the worst thing to ever happen to me. And I definitely think everyone needs to start talking about depression more. So many people have it. I had a friend kill themselves recently, and I wish it was something we talked about more, because I know she struggled, but I know she wasn't super open about that struggle either. So the marriage of social justice, when that empathy kind of caught up to me, you just start looking at things with a more critical eye, and you start thinking, what if I was in that situation? And then not even you. It becomes, greater than you. This things shouldn't have to affect you to work on them, to try and change the system.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of times in life, people don't do anything until tragedy strikes.
Yes.
That's when they first decide.
And that's where veganism comes in, eating animals. It's so easy to dissociate from meat. Meat can be a product in a grocery store that we never think.
Package, yeah.
An animal came into onto our plate from a history. We just don't think about it because it's not something that affects us on the daily.
I read that you came from a family that was heavily involved in public service, right?
Yes.
Your father, he was a Marine, and your mom worked for the government. She was in the CA. When did you first felt like public service is your calling? How did it all start?
Yeah, so I was in the nonprofit sector for 5 years before I started working in the government. But it wasn't until, honestly, the Depression hit that I knew I wanted to dedicate myself to some higher good. It helps with the Depression to have something and to work towards something that is greater than you. It helps me tremendously.
And when did you feel that you're good at it?
When did I feel that I was good at it? Well, that's open for interpretation. I just try my hardest and try to make as few mistakes as possible every day, and that's there's no answer to that.
So who's like your mentors in the work that you're doing now? I know your work is varied, and we'll get into the different work you're doing. But usually it's like you wake up in the morning, you go, okay, today I'm going to do this and good things. But there's always who influenced the Cro-Mags, who influenced this band. There's always somebody who's done that, who's been the influences.
So I have a lot of mentors. I kind of find mentorship in all of my friends because everyone has a tidbit to offer. They've all been through trials and tribulations, and they've all made mistakes, and making mistakes is the best way to really go further.
And it's interesting, when you grow up in life, a lot of times people, are afraid to make mistakes, or they get yelled at, and you're committing a sin, and I heard that the Latin word for mistake is sine, is where the word sin comes from, and it's really not a bad thing. It's not a sin to you want to making mistakes is the way you learn, and people shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. They should be pushed to be able to do whatever they dream of.
I make mistakes every day, so
Yay.
It's a problem.
Welcome to the club, the Mistake Show.
What I really liked about talking to you and reading about you is that you always open yourself for better suggestions.
Yes.
There is no right or wrong. I was listening to one of your interviews, and you said, I can't figure this thing out. How do I go and talk to parents about school lunches, okay? And you immediately ask, if you have a suggestion, if you have a better idea how to do it, please contact me.
Yeah.
And this impartial, tendency, or this idea of always looking for opinion, it's so innovative, I think, for our political system, when everybody is just enforcing, you are with blues, or you are with another party, so you either white or you black. Right. There is nothing in the middle. And another thing I shared with Eddie, I was impressed when I was looking at your Twitter. You said something about, I would never think that I would retweet this.
It was the Trump war room. It was definitely.
What was it?
It was, so the right, when the left has been talking more and more about Meatless Mondays and reducing our meat consumption, Trump War Room actually made a wonderful montage of all the candidates talking about this. And I thought to myself, oh, how fantastic. They just made an ad for us.
Yeah, and you said, but information is great. And this desire, drive for collaboration, for striving to achieve goal, doesn't matter who is around you, as long as they pulling all together. And it's so important for us not to polarize and say, these people are not with us, we are not even going to listen to them. Okay, it's so important. And I think that you are representing a new generation, a younger force in political activities that is not really so interested in fights and picking
Well,
of
I do-
what is right, what is wrong, but actually delivering.
But I think I've met a lot of people who are from the millennials or the newer generations, or who are, the future leaders. That's what we hope for, and to fight the system. And that's why I was wondering, in the series of lines, like I'd read something about a Dr. Greger that was important to you. Why was he important to you?
Yeah, Dr. Greger's a good friend, so I will start there. He's just a phenomenal person. He and I look at the world with the same sort of utilitarian vantage point, and so he's done so much for the field of public health. His website, nutritionfacts.org, they put out videos all the time. He has come out with several books, including How Not to Die. He's coming out soon with a book called How Not to Diet. And the amount of people he's helped is tremendous. Just one person making such a large impact is inspirational.
And then, so when you wake up each day and you're thinking about what I'm going to do today, what is the focus for you these days?
The focus is largely to move the political conversation toward looking at public health. Notoriously, public health has been a very personal thing, and if the government gets involved, it's considered a nanny state, et cetera, what Bloomberg did
And what's
with
that
big...
state? Tell people what nanny state
Yeah, so for instance, when Bloomberg introduced the soda tax, for the average person, I'd say they thought it was kind of an attack on them, a little bit of you're doing something you enjoy, here's a tax on that. And so a nanny state being, follow the rules. I'm not even sure. That's a great question. I've never thought about the definition of a nanny state, but a state that really overly controlled, sure, and that blows up in the
making
face.
definitions here.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So, all right. So now you're out there, and you're not thinking, okay, I'm going to be a mentor for people. But do you find folks around in your age group that are looking to do the kind of things you're doing and bring them on with you?
Yeah. So I try and inspire as many people to get into public service, because in the time, especially the time of number 45, we are wanting to make the world a better place, and yet people aren't seeing government as an outlet for that.
And why do you think that?
Notoriously, government bureaucracy has just impeded social justice, and the delay when you're working in the private sector and you want to change something, it's fairly easy to alter the course to get a project done in a week. Government takes longer. It can have more substantial impact, though. The impact that we've had with Meatless Monday, I could never have had that impact if I was just working in the nonprofit sector.
All right, let's talk about Meatless Monday. How did that idea start as a seed, and how did it become a full-grown seed in the world of non-meat?
So the Borough president, the Brooklyn Borough president,
Eric Adams.
And you work in
I work for him now, yes. I love working for him. He's a total delight, including when you say, who are your mentors? He's a mentor. So he had changed, to give you background on him, he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes about 3 years ago. And it was so bad that he was blind in his left eye, had tingling in his fingers and toes. The doctors told him, you're gonna have to turn in your driver's license, you might have some amputations. And he went to 5 doctors, they all said the same thing. He then found Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, and Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn out at the Cleveland Clinic, and they said, there's another way. So he found whole food, plant-based nutrition, and he got his life back. He actually got his sight back. He reversed the diabetes, lost 35 pounds.
Right, the tingling, I remember reading about that, no more tingling. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that, food is medicine. It really is. Yeah. So Hippocrates said,
Absolutely.
Let food be thy medicine.
So because of his own personal struggle and journey, he then catapulted to how do I implement this in government? And he and I were both kind of coming at it. So I was coming at it from the mayor's office. He was coming at it from the borough president's office.
And as you say, in bureaucracy, you said it easier than I did. Bureaucracy is takes longer than the public sector. So now you're combining the two.
In the private sector, yeah,
private.
Absolutely. So in fact, the idea of Meatless Monday, the mayor asked me to write up a proposal, and that was, I think, in September. We launched Meatless Monday in October in
Wow.
15 Brooklyn schools. So it was a pilot. And from there, we had a good year of Meatless Monday, and then it expanded to
Got
all
any
schools.
feedback on it?
Yeah.
The feedback was positive. It was a mixture of people not really noticing to saying, hey, this chickpea dish is one that I had not
Wow.
been exposed to before.
But if you remember when they wanted to take away the soda, people were angry. You remember, Sarah Palin when they were in the government was trying to impose, health, take the vending machines out of the schools,
That's the
and
vending
people
machine, yeah.
went crazy, and they were like, and they all banded together, like, we don't want this to happen, even though it's against their better good. So did you find any of that at the beginning when you went for Meatless Monday? Were there parents who said, how can you do that to our children? We're meat people.
Well, there's always going to be haters out there, no matter what you do, good, bad.
Yeah, if you cure cancer, there's those haters like, yay, cancer.
Sure. Yeah. So we had hate on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
Wow.
but that's just noise.
Knowing that system is so bad and lunches are so bad.
Yeah,
My God.
but
And then the addiction, too. You're afraid
That's
of
true.
that addiction to, I need this because I was told I need this, and, but that's also advertising. But the point is that you started this in 2018 in September. It happened in October. And what's it like? We're a year later.
We have Meatless Monday in every single New York City public school.
Wow.
And not only in public schools, but in all public hospitals, so all H&H facilities, health and hospitals. And we are pushing for Meatless Mondays in jails, homeless shelters, and daycare centers. So Meatless Monday is a wave that we'll be pushing until it's all over.
I'm glad it's going to be in jails. It's funny. The other day I was walking around and I'm thinking, I've never been to jail, but I don't want to. But if I end up going to jail, because, in my mind, I'm doing jail things that would put me in jail.
Like bad jokes, right?
Yeah, to tell a bad joke. I would, would they feed me vegan?
So they would. In fact, there was a big lawsuit about it several years ago where someone who ate a vegan diet wasn't getting vegan food, and then she had a lawsuit, and now there's a vegan menu out there. But
Did she get beat up because you're the one who got the vegan?
More importantly, though, than just her story is the fact that actually a lot of times people come in and they leave healthier from jail because you are not.
Oh, that's marketing?
I wish I could say.
Commit a
go to
crime.
jail. Yeah.
You have
But
a
it's-
diabetes,
Come on in.
But
Just
it's
rob
true.
a store.
It's true that we, as standard American diet eaters, we're killing ourselves. And if we can give them slightly healthier food in jail, then at least we have done that sort of public service. Now, is the food healthy? I think the borough president and I would both say that there's room to grow, but we're definitely on the pathway to that.
What is interesting for me, I remember we had a conversation once, and I asked you, how come nobody is touching food in terms of political discussion? And you told me, Vladimir, it's so obvious. It's a poisonous subject. Nobody is
Yes.
gaining. So explain
Yes.
it. You told me nobody is gaining anything from it. Everybody is afraid to touch it, and you guys are
I
going
touch it. I love
straight,
to touch them.
straight in and addressing those issues that never been addressed. That's kind of. And I also want to share my personal attitude. The change when I first met you. I think I shared with you my disappointment about. I tried to do something with fire department, offered them teaching them how to do meals and stuff. And I said, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's too hard. And you said, Vladimir, you'll be surprised. When we start doing something, we usually get to achieve it. I was like, wow, this is like the best encouragement I ever heard, because usually it's, oh, it's too difficult to do it.
And Vlad and I were also talking about this, because, and he sort of brought it up earlier, is that, most of the people in charge in the world are people who, in their 60s or 70s, and they're stuck in their ways. Are you able to melt the negativity from a different generation do you think the younger generation is fighting enough now to melt?
No, we need to use our voices more. So when I was working at the mayor's office, I received probably 5 inquiries about food in my entire year and a half of being there. That's nothing. When you think about the 311 calls that come in for the raccoon that is digging into your trash, food is just not a topic area that people even think is related to government. So, and yet the city contracts, the procurement contracts are huge. The food we're giving our students are sometimes the only meals that they're receiving. You've got school breakfast, school lunch. You've got food everywhere, sprinkled throughout government, in homeless shelters, in jails, etc. And yet, people have not made their voices heard. And then there's the mixture of what voices, because you've got people on all sides, people who say that keto is the best, people who say that plant-based nutrition is the best, and the science is difficult to navigate. I mean, thank goodness everyone agrees. So many opinions, so much noise. Thank goodness everyone agrees that eating your fruits and vegetables is a good thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for that,
That's
we
good. We
check.
should bring some food out as well and continue our conversation. Yeah. No, the more we're talking about food, I'm just like, yeah. So
In a minute.
yes. Now I'm all, out of it because no food. Honey, I need some. Where's my?
So you call yourself, I read, effective altruist. Can you elaborate on this?
For sure. So effective altruism is a small movement growing traction, but it's a small movement. In fact, the phrase was only coined back in, I want to say 2011. And it is about trying to maximize the good that you do in the world. So whether that be through what's called earn to give, so taking a high income position and donating the majority of that, or whether you are looking at issue areas and you're looking at where to donate. So I donate 10% of my salary. I make sure that I'm subscribed to those monthly donations as well as some of the year-end donations. I make it a priority because not only does it help me, it helps my depression, but also the groups out there are doing phenomenal work and they are not getting what they need in terms of funding. So effective altruism looks at 3 categories in cause areas. It looks at how large is the problem, what's the scale. So for me, and looking at farm animals, I think, okay, the scale for the US is about 9 billion land animals that we're raising and killing each year. Mm-hmm. When we look at the neglectedness, everyone loves their cats and dogs. I love my parents' cats. Where is our love and compassion to those that we don't see? We're not seeing pigs, we're not seeing chickens on a daily basis. And so it's a very neglected field. And then you look at tractability. Is there a solution to this problem? And there clearly is. There's establishments like this that give people delicious food that doesn't involve some of that suffering that farm animals are enduring. So you look at that, you look at the fact that we now have Impossible Whoppers at Burger King. We now are in Manhattan trying breakfast sandwiches with Beyond Sausage in all Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, you look at the problem of how do we change our food system, and there are solutions. There are solutions to all the chronic diseases that we're suffering from. The fact is, if you have type 2 diabetes or if you have heart disease, if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, you will reverse that.
Yes.
And people don't
Within
know that.
Sometimes as little as 5 days, sometimes the most like 2 weeks,
Right.
people throw away all their medication from that. And people are afraid. People want that what do they call the silver bullet or the
I want the quick fix.
quick fix. They
Yeah.
said, well, I want to eat all the bad food, but I don't want the diabetes. So is there a pill you can give me that I could take? And there are pills that they give them. Unfortunately, it doesn't make them better. It just gives them more side effects.
So I have a question, and I'm more curious, to see at you, because I have children growing up, and I want to know. You had two spectacular examples how you were chosen to lead certain positions. One in Mayor de Blasio office, Mr. Adams' office. How were you perceived at the beginning? Were you perceived as a just giggling girl who is happy and trying to save the world, or you were perceived as a serious player who comes in to change the world? Because you obviously had an agenda. They didn't just hire you for certain things. They hired you for specific purpose, right? And knowing now what you accomplished, you definitely accomplished some specific goals. I know that you helped to ban using animals in a circus, a lot of those things. So how were you perceived? Just a idealistic girl who doesn't know what she wants, she just wants to change the whole world, or they saw you as a serious player who comes in and brings force with her?
So I had two obstacles to overcome. One, and it's not exactly being able to overcome them per se, but one, I'm a woman, and being a woman in government, the room is still fairly skewed toward men. And so one is just honestly being comfortable to express my opinions in a very direct way without, some of the labels that come along with that. So there's that, and then there is the age obstacle. I'm
That's
young.
gonna go.
Sure, it'll go away eventually. But right now, it is something that I know when people first look at me, I get dismissed constantly. People will, I'll be next to the borough president and, I'll be ignored, et cetera. It's very hilarious how people treat you. And then when the borough president says, okay, Rachel will handle it, talk to her. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
Great. Glad I can
It's a
help.
very judgmental world where people make judgments immediately.
Not even judgmental, prejudgmental. They don't
Yeah.
even know.
But
Right.
the how I was perceived, I think I worked my ass off constantly. I was working 12, 14-hour days. I still pull those sometimes. And I think I ended up just putting in the work. And if you put in the work, you will be taken more seriously.
Wow, that's so nice to
That's
hear.
pretty good. Now, what's very also interesting is when you were growing up, you grew up in a house where your father was a meat eater, and I thought that was kind of interesting when I was looking up about how you convinced him to not eat meat. Will you tell that story?
Not convinced, she negotiated.
I know.
It's true,
I know,
negotiation.
Yeah.
So I grew up, my father grew up in Iowa. He grew up on a hog farm. He slaughtered
And
animals.
your mother, dairy farm.
Yeah,
is that
my
right?
mother
Yeah.
in Kentucky on a dairy farm. So he was hunting animals, he was trapping animals, and he was slaughtering animals. The trio of compassion, for sure.
And at that point in your life, did you have did you fight your dad on that, or?
So that was his childhood. Then he joined the Marine Corps. He joined the police department in DC, and he had cooked the same meals, pasta all the time, pasta and
proud of
meatballs.
it,
He
I can
was.
imagine,
I mean,
right?
we had steak once a week, I would say. So he was used to his standard American diet. I then discovered this thing called vegetarianism. I discovered this thing called veganism, and he was furious because, one, he doesn't meditate. We talked
Right.
about that.
Yeah.
More people need to meditate. But two, he just didn't want to cook another meal. And he thought that if he was eating standard American and I was eating vegan, he would have to cook that other meal. It doesn't exactly work like that.
And it's interesting that he was angry.
He
about
was
it.
angry, yeah.
It's an interesting. Instead, that's the first go-to. Instead of being, people are scared of seeing
Right.
things like that, so it scares them into anger.
Well, and it
But
was
it's also
frustration.
personal because you didn't want his meals, right? You
exactly,
didn't appreciate
yeah.
him being a chef and taking care of the family,
Yeah.
right?
Sure. So then I went off to college, and my dad being in the Marine Corps, you would think he'd have a USMC tattoo, but he is very against tattoos. So I'm very for tattoos. The punk rock scene aided to that. And I wanted when I was 18 to go out and get a tattoo. So I said, hey, Dad, going off to college. Peace. I'll be getting that tattoo.
See you later.
And he was taken aback. He was like, no, how could you? And
Did he have tattoos?
he didn't. No, he does not like them. And so he said, what will it take to get you to not have a tattoo?
Wow, that's where you got your negotiations
Yeah,
from, right?
so I said, you know what, I really don't like you eating animals, so how about you go vegetarian? At the time, he wanted to retire on a boat and he wanted to be able to fish, so we settled for pescatarian.
Right.
So once he started eating pescatarian, he just felt better. He felt better, and cops notoriously, on average, live about 3 years past retirement because they've just eaten crap their whole life, and the stress, et
Right,
cetera.
the
I mean,
stress
there's a lot.
Yeah, and the regiment and the schedule.
Sure. So we settled for pescatarianism. The deal was through college, and he thought, okay, after 4 years, she'll grow up, she'll learn. And I graduated in 3 years, and after that 3 years, I decided, okay, let's see what else I can get out of this deal. And so we made a deal of 10 years, and he would go vegan.
Wow.
And he not only went vegan just for that deal, but he is the happiest vegan you'll find.
Wow.
He's just so enthusiastic
But
about
they
it.
both kept the ends of the deal.
Yes,
so
yes,
that's
I kept
impressive.
it. I
Well,
kept
you
it.
know, you could see that when you have a life of, what he's doing for his career, he's regimented and he's, his word is his honor. And so when you have this deal, the word is the honor, but you do end up, like my father didn't want me to be a comedian. He was really against it and he didn't come to my shows. But eventually a situation came about where he became my biggest fan. So it's so rewarding when that happens. I'm sure for you, the same thing. It was rewarding when your dad all of a sudden joined you in this vegan world.
Oh, yeah.
But I also think subconsciously he understands the value of what you create. And does he appreciate your work?
He is very, very supportive. I'm
that's nice.
incredibly lucky. And my mom is vegetarian, mostly vegan now as
Whoa.
well. So Thanksgiving is the easiest holiday for us. It's the most delicious holiday for us.
Yeah. We used to have a Thanksgiving that we would go to with all our friends, and there was no vegan food, but me and my friend's daughter were vegan, so we brought our own, vegan stuff, and we'd eat our little things. And eventually, after 4 Thanksgivings, with people going, "Oh, let me try some of that," it became 3/4 vegan and 1/4,
I
turkey
always
leg.
tell people, don't preach, just bring them good food or
Just
bring
be an
them
example.
here. And
So let's
we'll-
bring some good food. Where
Oh boy, you just
not about-
you
yeah.
just getting the end of the deal.
yeah,
anyway
because we
you do.
want to show people the great food we have. And
All right,
yeah.
let's go.
So, do you live in this area?
I do. I live in the West Village. I am one of the luckiest people alive.
What's the difference between you feel in DC and New York?
DC's a
Be
town.
careful.
I know.
People in DC are listening.
Yeah.
So DC is a town, New York's a city. So DC, I know like the back of my hand. It is incredibly small, and it's like a neighborhood. And then New York, you've got actual things happening
Oh,
constantly.
Eddie.
Speaking of
I
actual
hope we're
things
gonna
happening.
Make you happy.
Yes, the food here is amazing. That's why I'm happy.
And we're going to need some plates.
Yes.
So this is our what we
Thank
call
you so much.
waffle burger. Okay, this is omelet, burger, patty, and waffles. And this is what we call
Heaven. We call that heaven.
tofu Benedict, and we usually serve it on brunch, served with tempeh bacon. Oh my god!
It's very
And
delicious.
hash browns.
And you're not eating anything?
As you can see, I'm cooking for myself too.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
enjoy,
that's
enjoy
good.
this food. So you just decided that you're going to have it, right?
No, I'm going to cut it up for everyone.
I'm joking.
Yes.
And
Now,
I
it's
want to
interesting
share it, guys. This is frittata.
That's
So
the
if you
key,
guys
that's the
want
monster.
to try some, I'll share it with you.
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
All right, let's go.
Thank you, Belinda. Belinda works here, and she's amazing.
Yep. And
That's one
she's
great
our-
thing about this restaurant. It's very family. You come in here and you're like family. Thank you so much.
So you just became my family?
I was your family before. You don't even know this about our fathers. Actually, no.
All
Little
right.
secrets about our family, but it's great. And it's funny because I usually don't eat like bread stuff to try to be as
You
thin
can
as
still
I am.
not eat it.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. It also depends on what type of bread. If
Yeah.
you've got
What kind of bread is this?
Those actually waffles We make it of spell flour.
Ah,
So it's not technically gluten-free, but it's still less
oh my
wheat.
God.
Oh,
It
and
doesn't stop.
this is our new
Oh,
item.
wow.
We call it breakfast omelet, and it can be served either with hash brown like it is now, or with pancakes. And it's omelet, and it's our famous burger patty.
It's
It's
delicious.
good.
This is my favorite interview ever.
How do you think we get guests?
We lure them in.
You're
with
so
food.
sweet.
Yeah.
So it would be a yes regardless.
Okay, I just want to tell you something and want to get your opinion on this. Okay, so me being immigrant, and it's probably big kind of generalization, but I'm sure people have these opinions. Like, for me, coming from former communistic country, we didn't trust government that much, okay? And it's always associated with people who kind of power-driven, career-oriented, and I'm sorry to say it, but sometimes people feel like those politicians sometimes say something that gets them to be
elected,
chosen, be
right.
elected,
Right.
just to vote it for. And then they can flip any way they want. Again, it's misconception and it's generalization, but it's really what a lot of people are thinking for. You can see.
Because you think, in the 60s, everyone was like, there was a time when people were, let's, be peaceful and equality and all that kind of stuff. And then the government said, yeah, we will get in equality, and then it didn't happen. And here we are 50 years later. And now there's, do you see a future?
But I didn't
where-
even finish my question.
Okay. Do you see a future in his question?
No, what I'm trying to say is that you can see often candidate that tells about his program, and sometimes it changes a little, right? And then it changes a lot, and then nothing happened, right? Because they kind of are trying to serve the majority. This is your iced tea.
listening.
I'm not touching it. Don't worry. Don't get excited.
I'm not
And also, you're not excited.
No.
And with you, I see completely different. Like, not only that you are very consistent in your choices, but you basically going with your agenda and being invited for it, right? Like, you wouldn't come to work for the office and then change or switch or settle. Quite opposite, you see it as a platform to implement more of your ideas or something that
Like
you
Meatless Monday,
inspired.
and how you made it
So
go in
it's
one
very
month.
different. Like, I see the completely different attitudes that you need this platform, you need this position to implement some of your goals and what you think is right. And for me, it's like very inspiring, and I'm very hopeful that this is a new trend of people who would come in to do something, not just to get the position, not just to get to power, and not just to get to being lovable or being voted for.
Yeah, I'm driven. That is one of the, if you were to ask me top 3 characteristics, that I know what I want, and there's a pathway. I mean, there's a pathway toward getting a healthier society. There's a pathway toward reducing animal suffering. I have a goal, and I will achieve that goal. So thankfully, there are thousands, tens of thousands of advocates for this lifestyle across the globe. So it's by no means just one person, but we've got so many different pathways in. And this is a pathway that is underrepresented. I mean, working in the field of government for plant-based nutrition, this is the only position like it across the country. So
Do you think that's because it's New York and it's a little open-minded?
I think it's a mixture of things. One, I think I have a principal who is phenomenal. The borough president he's driven.
Gotcha.
So I think if more elected officials were driven on this issue, we'd see more positions like this.
Yeah, and that's because it affected him personally.
Yeah.
He was able to see again and get his life back.
And we've got several politicians who should be moving more in this direction. I mean, literally my heart breaks when people have type 2 diabetes and they don't know that they can
That
reverse
you can
it.
get rid of it right away.
Yeah.
But what Vlad was saying at the very beginning of his question was that about government and how we don't have really the trust in government to be able to do the things they said beyond wanting to be elected.
Right.
Do you see that changing?
Well, one, government is not a silver bullet. So no matter what government does, you still need to go into work. You still need to work hard. You still need to be a phenomenal person, compassionate toward family, friends, etc. So there's not a one size fits all, this is going to solve our problems. We need to put in the work as constituents, as just residents of New York, to make New York a better place. But New York has the ability, its agencies have the ability to make our lives better. And I think it's possible. Yeah.
It's important. It's also important that you feel when you go to work that it's going to make a difference, because you can just be banging your head against the wall if you didn't have Eric Abrams, or if you didn't have someone to back you up on that. It makes a difference. What can we or people do to make your life easier or more utile, or what can we do as a society to help out? What can people do at home or in their cars right now driving to a place?
Yeah.
What can they do to help you?
So a mixture of things.
OG Talk. Well, they're already listening to it, so we got them there.
So a mixture of things. One, getting active in government. So the fact that people aren't calling their representatives asking about plant-based nutrition is a problem, because
Do you think people call their government? A lot of people do.
I think a lot of people call their government about the potholes. I think a lot of people call their government about sanitation. People are calling about a number of issues that hit close to home that
So
they
there's no
connect.
connection, right?
Exactly, that they connect government with. You don't connect it with your type 2 diabetes. And yet public hospitals should all be recommending plant-based nutrition as a way to combat type 2 diabetes.
Right, you're doing something with Bellevue, aren't you?
Bellevue Hospital, we have a program that
Dr.
is
Osfeld?
Dr. Osfeld up at Montefiore also got his cardiac wellness program that's amazing. Dr. Michelle McMacken has her program, the plant-based lifestyle medicine program. We were expecting in the first year about 100 to 200 patients. We have 650 people on the waiting list. People want this, and that's a result from government.
650 people waiting list, but how many people are served?
So we've only been able to serve, I think, about 200 people have been off that list so far. So we still have
But
450.
currently, in a rotation.
In a rotation, that's a good question. That's a question for Michelle. I don't know the particulars. My job is to
so
get
we
them
need to
more
invite her
funding.
next.
So, yes, Michelle is an amazing advocate for this lifestyle. She's just been a doctor who's seen the results on a daily basis.
So again, what can we do now?
So call your representatives. Programs like Bellevue are in public hospitals. We need them in public hospitals, because where do the indigent population go? They go to the public hospitals. And they're the ones who are not being taught this information in the first
So
place.
lead us through, just because you know the mechanics, we don't. Okay, let's say certain amount of people call. What happens? It's becoming well known. Representatives are going to be aware of the problem, and they must react. What's the engine behind it?
So the grassroots movement has not taken flight. We're not seeing people call about this issue at all. And when people call, it generates buzz. When people call, the director of policy at a small politician, city council member's office, looks into it and says, oh, is there any merit behind this? And then when they look and they find out, oh, there's this hospital in Manhattan that's doing this program, they see, okay, there's precedent, we can do something. So I think it's a mixture of the volume of calls, but also the information. So if you're able to go and meet with your representative and outline, here's what is possible, here are the plethora of options in this space. So getting Meatless Mondays in your schools, installing a plant-based nutrition program in your hospitals, this is all possible. We just need people to ask for it. People aren't asking for this, because again, there's this dissociation between government
So that's why
and personal.
you think that there is not a lot of attention because there is no need presented, right?
At town halls with 400 people, we will not get a single question about
Wow.
nutrition.
And we want that to change, so that's what we want the people to do.
Yes.
So we're here with Rachel Atcheson, and we're so happy that you came to join us today. And we're glad that you can eat with us now, so we appreciate your visit.
Thank you,
very,
thank you.
very much.
And anyone is welcome to reach out to me. I
What's the
mentor
information
people.
that they can reach to you?
I mentor people across the country who are looking to become more involved in this space, and always happy to help. So, I mean, I'm comfortable giving out my email, rachelatcheson@gmail.com. So if you have any questions, by all means.
Okay, all right. There we go. You had one more question, Vlad. I can see.
I actually want to share something with you, and it kind of something that I'm constantly thinking of for a couple of months, and I formulated before today, and this is something coming from me doing it for almost 20 years. Like we all talking about freedom of speech, we all talking about should people have rifle, shouldn't people have rifle. But nobody is ever talking about like freedom not freedom, right for food. Like we have right. I think that we deserve to have right for clean food. Like now we literally paying extra just not to be poisoned, just not to be getting all this. Why? Because it's so easy to change these policies and not let people use pesticides or growth hormone, and it's coming
but the
from
people with all the money are the ones with the pesticides.
I'm not even talking about this now, but I'm me as a citizen. Like, do I have right for clean food? Do my kids have to have right for clean food, or I just have to pay extra and work hard to kind of protect this right and fight for it? And I'm sorry, and also. We as vendors, and I consider ourselves vendors of this organic food, we always put in such a position that we almost have to defend ourselves or have to lower our margins to be able to provide it. And people come in and they say, for example, your food is expensive, right? Like why? But what if this food would be just food, not organic food, just clean food? And then we would cook and people would come in. So it's always on my mind, and like I always thought, am I in the right fight? That I'm like that we're doing this organic food? No, but why we are doing this? Like we have to be providers of this organic food and charge more for it and buy it for more money when it just can be clean. I think it's a bigger issue for maybe for next podcast, but it's always like put me in a position that I almost like have to defend someone's bad deeds and try to make it clean when it can be just clean. It's always
that goes across the board with everything in our society. When we do the right thing, we have to defend it sometimes because, it's like with, cleaning up the water or the air or that. We have to defend it. And if people say, well, global warming, well, we have to defend that. Well, that scientist said we paid the scientist to, say that, no, the air is clean and everything is good.
It's
and,
all good.
That's the problem we have.
Yeah. And there's a mixture of levels there. I mean, you've got the USDA dietary guidelines, you've got subsidies, we're subsidizing meat and dairy. There's a lot that's going against us, and I think where government has its place is the food it provides on a daily basis.
Exactly.
School food is something that, hey, if you're not thinking that is your government is responsible for the chronic disease that you get after you're going to school, we're living in a non-ideal place. We're moving in the right direction, but we have made so many mistakes that it's going to take a little bit of time.
But like you said, making mistakes is okay, and the people, our friends who are watching, will help us and support us and call the government. How do they call the government?
You call your city council member, your state senator, state assembly person. You can contact the mayor's office. You contact the agencies directly.
Go to a town hall and ask a question.
Exactly. Ask the Department of Health.
That would be impressive.
Yeah. I mean, there's a plethora of ways to reach out.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel.
Very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's
Thank you for the
have
food.
let's
Let's
do the
eat
food.
finally.
Okay.